We have one excused absence, which is Robert. We have the motion to accept his absence. Josh, your second. And all those in favor? Position? No. You have the minutes from January's meeting. Any corrections or updates? Motion to receive the minutes. Luann, a second. Yes, I know before. All in favor? No opposition. We have any comment, public comment?
I don't believe we have any signed up for public comment, Matt, do we? Any? No.
All right. So on to, Nicola with the plan commission.
Yeah, that's a brief update, not so much on the planning condition side, the year here. We have a brief update, but I think Ben has the highlights.
Okay.
Hey y'all, like I said, not much of an update until this again. Get back into the whole kind of council meetings. I think the new council finally getting busy council meetings kind of under their belts now, but we had a couple cases that were of interest, not necessarily directly stormwater issues, so we kind of bring the council today on. So I haven't seen that one that we talked about last weekend. Last weekend. Sorry. Last month. It feels like last weekend. Last month. It's in the Falls Lake watershed, so that's on our list as far as either planning commission or city council. But the first one, DD 1224 is just a large assemblage of land. I think it'd be nice to just put on the commission radar, but it's like 240 acres. We don't want to see something like that out of East Raleigh. And the other one is a change to an approved master plan, which is likely zoning case with more conditions, which is right behind Cracker Valley Mall. So all right, so the large case in East Raleigh here is off Old Cruise Road and Old Mill Burning Road, 242 acres, and it's in District D, which is Councilor Patton's district. Currently zoned in Wake County, so it would have to be annexed as well. And their zoning is about 30, which I think is like 30,000 square foot lots. It's kind of what their zoning designation is based on. And the public hearing has not been scheduled. It's supposed to be scheduled for the first weekend, for the first public hearing in March. But the applicant asked for that decision to be deferred till the next council meeting, which is the 18th of February. So it could be scheduled in March sometime, but it'll probably be an evening public hearing based on that hearing and planning. There's a large creek, the Hodges Mill Creek, which bisects it, which has a lot of floodplain and some other streams coming down. I just want to bring this to your attention. 203 acres, nothing really to sneeze at. And I think we're going to have issues with fire coverage and things like that. Not necessarily stormwater issues, but we're going to go on the radar. Next one.
That's a question. Where is that within our urban growth boundary?
So I believe it is in kind of that eastern growth category because it's only EPJ, it's still in the county. But because I think they just finished that study last year on it. So I think it was part of that eastern growth pattern study. I'm not exactly certain.
The southeast study, southeast.
Yeah, the southeast study, because it's on the northern portion of the southeastern side. It's not like
So it's within the HPP.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's another question, sorry, Ben. Typically, what do you see with R6?
R6 is townhomes pretty much. We don't quite get to apartments with R6. But this is what it looks like in area. So it's mainly forested now. There's a couple houses up here. Maybe, no. Yeah. So it's mainly forested and open space right now.
It's the R30 ones, right?
No, R30 the county zoning is now, and they base those on square footage of lots. So I believe that's 30,000 square foot lots. So they don't do like R1, R2, like we do. Per acre, they do like, you can build a 30,000 square foot lot. So, which is about half an acre. And about three-quarters. Yeah, three-quarters.
Hey, Ben, real quick, is it, Are they looking to do conditional use, conditional use or?
Yeah, it's the master plan. The report from Tuesday had R6 and R6 conditional use, so I don't know. It's just so, it's a wide straight, but it's not actually. Lots of people are not happy to be master plan. You see a lot more, but for whatever reason, master plans are not in vogue correctly. It's a great segue to our next. Thank you. So this is, so our next one is a actual. So this is, a change to the existing master plan from 2012. If anyone knows this area behind Cracker Valley Mall, it's Blue Ridge Avenue, or Blue Ridge Road, and Cracker Valley Avenue. One more time, it's a little triangle here. Back in 2012, they put a master plan up to, apartments. It's a mixed use through here. They've built in northern, not northern, the highest area of the apartments, which have been here for a while. And there's still a vacant lot here. And there's a vacant lot here, which is pretty much where the stormwater device is. Right now, they built the stormwater device back in 2013 time period to account for all the impervious from the entire development, so spread of large stormwater devices here outside the human floodplain. They're coming in this time for a change to the master plan conditions to allow them to do townhomes. Then vacant parcel. They were going to do more apartments and some other stuff, retail stuff here, and I think they're switching to straight townhomes, so it'll have to be a little bit less impervious than they first forecasted. And there's some changes in the retaining walls, which is driven by the site. They have some pretty impressive retaining walls out there driven by that Humboldt Banks area. And but they are tiering the new retaining walls to be no higher than 10 feet and setback, and another one about 10 feet high. So that was one condition at the council on Tuesday night. But the only change, stormwater, is just they were incorporating the updated FEMA maps. Because since they had the initial master plan in 2012, we've updated our maps in 2022. So they wanted to have the master plan to reflect that while they were getting the change in the case. So nothing from stormwater really changed. It's just a little bit interesting, but it's a high flooding, high traffic, high commercial area. For you guys would do something about it. But this was approved on Tuesday night, February 4th by council, so it will go into effect. Just the aerial portion, you can kind of see this on the upside. This is going to the stormwater box right here. And then we got the mall here, and looking down house here, that's on the corner, Cracker Valley, and stuff. And then I agree with my trailer. Any questions on that? Like I said, we expect some more meteor cases as the new council picking up steam. So,
Not the previous one, yeah, just wondering, does the stormwater department have, I'd like to hear y'all's opinions on that one. It looked like you said, it's nothing to sneeze at, it's a lot of acreage,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of floodplain in there, so, what is y'all's thinking on that?
we don't have any stormwater conditions now, obviously, since these parcels are currently vacant, they're have to leave a few publicly unsheltered now. There's a few parts that do have a little bit of development on it, so that may change some of the ones upper here. But obviously, if they leave all the street borders and the floodplain, I feel pretty good about it. I'm guessing, but I haven't seen a site plan for it, that there may be some creek crossing here, just to kind of connect the northern and the southern portion. Depending on what that looks like, assuming they just want one. Not sure what our opinion would be right now, without seeing the less creek crossings, the better. The stormwater street, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Thank you.
Moving on, no stormwater staff updates, at this time. Moving to high priority topics, just a reminder, for elections for the commission, will be held at the upcoming March meeting. And Chair Commissioner and Chair Taylor will be rolling off in April. Okay, so you would not be eligible for continuation as chair. As an update, we are in budget session. As we explained at the January meeting, we gave you a preview of the budget process. We do have a presentation on the agenda today, focused a little bit more specifically on the capital improvements plan process and projects. And then next, the meeting today, or the presentation today, is actually a preview of a presentation we will give to City Council at their February 18th work session. So that will be a morning work session at 11:30, held right before their normal 1 p.m. meeting that afternoon. And then next month in March, we will bring back a more full, comprehensive overall budget presentation, including recommendations related to rate increases and other changes and so forth. So that's just kind of a preview of coming attractions. We are now announcing at Commission suggestion and request upcoming stormwater related public meetings. So if you are coming up, it's going to be a busy spring. We do have the Marsh Creek watershed study underway. Data collection, a lot of work has already begun. But we will have the first public meeting on February 26th from 4 to 6:30, and that will be held at the Green Road Community Center in Northeast Raleigh. We also have a public meeting coming up on the Eastgate Lake Dam project. That is that's a lake and a dam located in Eastgate Park, which is in the North Hills area. And that project, we have some preliminary engineering work done, and we'll have a public meeting on February 27th at the community center there in Eastgate Park. Excuse me. We have in Lions Park and associated with the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Project, a public arts tabling and engagement event on March 22nd. Give the public an opportunity to have input on the creative, educational, and art displays that will be installed as part of that project at Lions Park. And then our annual Capture It Stormwater Arts Contest is open and receiving entries for the video and art categories. That will be open through February 28th. And subsequent to that, staff will be reviewing all of the entries, narrowing down the entries to the top candidates. And then at our next commission meeting in March, the commission will be the final judges for selection of the winners of that contest. So very excited about that. Another important and interesting event, during March 15th through the 22nd, which focuses on promoting the importance of healthy waterways through education and stewardship. And we have a number of events going on as part of that celebration. There's a cleanup at Worthdale Park on Saturday, March 15th. There is a biothon at the Wooten Meadow Park on Thursday, March 20th. There on the following Saturday, the 22nd of March, there will be a live stream staking with our drainage assistance team here at Durant Nature Preserve. So that'll be a demonstration of some of the stream stabilization techniques that we use and we help residents implement on their properties. And then also on March 22nd, there'll be a rain garden, rain barrel workshop here at the Durant Nature Preserve as well. So very excited about all those opportunities. Thanks, staff, for all the time that they're putting into the project. Notices prior to construction. The project we would like to note is the Spotswood Street Stormwater Control Measure Retrofit and Stream Restoration Project. And that project is located right around the corner from here. And the one that subsequent to this meeting, There'll be an optional opportunity for the commission to do a tour of that project. Now, construction has not begun, so the tour will consist of what is there, which is an old stormwater control measure that was installed prior to the city having stormwater regulations. It was put in as part of a rezoning condition, and in those days, we had insufficient regulatory enforcement mechanisms. So the stormwater control measure fell into disrepair. Stormwater staff, probably close to 10 years ago now, identified that as a opportunity for the city to get involved, retrofit it, revitalize it, take it over in terms of maintenance, because it drains highly impervious industrial areas, you'll see. Lots of storage units and other industrial buildings, and then flows into Durant Nature Park and then down a stream. So we'll talk about that project. We'll give a little preview of the tour at the end of this agenda, and then if you can stay for the tour and see the facility and the site, let them give you a tour. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Wayne. Any questions? We have rainwater rewards next. The only question I have related to the 100% is at Hampton Road Phase 2. Was the Phase 1 the 4,500 barrel underground cistern from January of last year?
Correct.
Okay.
And, just one comment on the setup. It's a little different than it's been the last couple of months. Staff did pull one from the modified consent agenda to answer questions. And that was the one we pulled. So, how we set it up in the memo is, the modified consent agenda consideration for these three, which were deemed as, all operating or all presented under the nitrogen metric, all fairly typical projects. And then staff would pull that one to consider separately and provide some additional information.
The commissioners have, well, so this is Phase 2 of the 4,500?
Yes.
Okay. The other commissioners have questions about any of these? Okay. And if, I mean, okay, if we just do this on that, so, okay. Yes. So we have a motion to approve all four? Okay. Samantha, is there a second? All in favor? The opposition? Very good, thank you. And there's no time restriction as far as if an applicant does something 1 year, that one must wait a calendar year for a separate one.
Correct. There is a cumulative threshold over 2 years where if somebody wants to do a project at the staff level, cumulatively over 2 years, if they did several projects, we would have to up it and bring it to the commission for review of that second project. That's a rarity. In this case, that Phase 2 did complete prior or did complete that rain garden prior to approval, so that's we want to put that out.
And by being Phase 2, is this considered one project, or I know it's in actuality it's two separate, but because you phased it, it's in the category of one.
So it'll be two separate projects, two separate legal agreements. One piece of additional information here is that original cistern project, they ended up at the time when they were building this out, unable to capture 22% of their impervious surface. So their cost share was prorated back, maxed out 22% less. And hence they directed that runoff to a rain garden, separate projects. So it's two standalone projects on the same property, two separate legal agreements, two separate maintenance terms. So, that's something we're going to. And if I just have just 1 second, in time to do what staff would be bringing forward, we have, over the next couple of months, we will have an R3 policy update. This effort is to support the stormwater fee credit, policy changes that will be coming before the commission. So we will come with that. And we also, have been tasked to, show you evaluation of the nitrogen metric cap compared to the SNAP tool, which is how we currently calculate that, compared to the simple method, which we did prior to about a year ago. So we'll be able to present that to you for commission feedback. We also have two rather large projects that will we will bring forward over the next two meetings. One is a large 100% project and a nonprofit. The other is a multi-unit residential property with about 15 features on it. So we bring that back for commission review and or in potential recommendation to city council. So thank you. If there aren't any questions.
Just question about your public audience. Is that saying? And there's.
So this is the available funds. What you'll do is this amount will be subtracted from that to get what would be available after these approvals. And it's based on fiscal year, so we're forecasting to be replenished on July. Thank you all.
Thank you, Justin. Okay, the water supply watershed project.
Not a project. We're not doing a project.
It's gonna be clear. I know.
All right, so this is just a broad overview, kind of our waterflow watershed, history, regulations, everything else. Just want to give everybody some background. We've had a lot of talk about project for rezoning cases that are in waterflow watersheds. So just kind of give you guys a good baseline. Turnover and visual, not exactly a bunch of inherent remember. So agenda, basically go through some of the history in Raleigh, our current regulations, and some future considerations that we can talk about with the commission, kind of moving forward, future meetings, things like that. First of all, history in Raleigh, the waterflow watershed regulations directs of all this regulations. Our main stormwater regulations came into effect in 2001, and my chair was always that from 1792 to 2001, Raleigh developed as much as they wanted to, and then we finally started kind of short. But sediment control was first in 1974 to kind of be a stormwater regulation for us. And then in 1978, we took over flood regulations, so that kind of kicked off then. And then with the watershed regulations, they were next before we got to any major post-construction standard. Pitt Falls first, even though they weren't the first by timeline to come on board, but just it's our drinking supply, it's our water. I figured I'll put it in front. So anyway, started the current regulations in their form that we know today kind of started in the early 90s. Passed down from the state of North Carolina that basically designated this area a watershed watershed level to be at. So it can kind of guide us as to what our regulations would be. Initially, they focused on reducing total split solids in our waterways or in the reservoir system. So that's kind of what it was all thinking about. And that all changed kind of once the nutrient sensitive water rules started going into effect in the late 90s, early 2000s. More of the focus was on nutrients. So in 2011, new regulations for Falls Lake went into effect. And they were talked about for years before 2011. So this is all kind of in the hopper for a while. But in 2011, they focused on changing regulations from TSS more to nutrient control. And their main nutrients were nitrogen, which is what it is in the News Basin, the overall News Basin, but also they added phosphorus, which is something brand new back in 2011. People just have to account for. So luckily, there's a fair amount of devices that can do both, which matters. They don't do it in the same way. So, and good things to note about our workshop regulations, and they do not directly address localized rate control. So like the 2 and 10 years going on for regulators and things like that, that's not really covered by the regulations. You're not really there. But we have push to go regulations to cover that. So that's Falls Lake, but this kind of area. Raleigh's down here. Falls Lake is, you know, Falls Lake is closer to what we use there. Falls Lake Dam, but there's a ton of other communities that kind of feed into Falls Lake, so it's not just Raleigh. Creek watershed, this was more back in the 1980s. I'm sure there was a cynical reason for this, but I'm going to take a positive attitude that Apex, Cary, Garner, Lake County, and Raleigh were all wanting to do something about this watershed, so they got together and created the Swift Creek Management Plan. So it's been around since the 80s, and we look at some of the other documents. You can tell it's been around since the 80s, including this map. But that's all right. I want to pull directly out of the plan there. But these regulations pretty much mirror Falls Lake. They first start out by total suspended solids, then you transition to nutrients. And Raleigh is down on the forefront on transitioning those to nutrients. In 2011, because we treat Falls Lake and Swift Creek the same from the stormwater regulations. So just got to keep that in mind. The interesting part about this piece is the changes to the plan or the regulation must be approved by the other 4 communities. It's not just Raleigh changing and double checking with the state, make sure they're doing it, even the state members. Any changes to the Swift Creek Land Management Plan, we have to take back to the other 4 communities, the blessed one, to their councils and commissioners. Much like the Falls Lake, like I said, does not address localized area control. Now, the new fund here, the newer one, the urban watershed, which is Richland Creek North, which if you know anything about streams in Raleigh, we have 2 Richland Creeks. There's one Richland Creek by the Domo Center, and then one up here in the Bedford Wakefield that goes downstream of the Falls Lake Dam to the News River. So these regulations started in 2011 as well, and they were passed down just like the Falls Lake by the state of North Carolina. They designate this area to be a watershed protection area that I've been outlining familiarly. The weird thing about this one is when they designated this area was already developed. It was essentially south of the river was Wakefield and north was Bedford. Well, I might have that backwards, but one of those. So 2 major developments that started in the late 90s, early 2000s that were pretty much already developed by 2011, and the state put a watershed business on it. So at the time, it stemmed from a municipal fight between Raleigh and Wake Forest about fresh water disputes. He was going to take water out of Falls Lake, and he wasn't. That Wayne might know more about that than I do, hopefully.
But it was a barn. My understanding was designating an intake location was Wake Forest Way. I don't think it was ever constructed, but it was a negotiating tool with the city of Raleigh since they would have another alternative water supply location. It gave them some negotiating room with the city of Raleigh when they were talking about the merger agreements of Raleigh serving Wake Forest. So I think that was the main part of what this was, but it has remained designated as a water supply watershed because it still could be used as a viable water supply intake in the future.
If I remember correctly, in this property, the Mountain Club property, which kind of the eye area here, the intake is owned by them, the old intake, we would have to be refurbished to be a new water supply. But as Wayne reference, once the state designates an area, a watershed area, really never take it. It's like, once you get it, you start. But it was the lowest level of their water supply regulations. So they have the most leeway, what to be developed and things like that. Like I said, the majority of the area is already pretty much developed. And once again, the city of Devils does not twist the last one. So that's kind of history of the 3 watersheds. And so this is our map, kind of where we're going. So obviously Raleigh's the blue area here, Falls Lake is kind of sliver here, and Swift Creek is kind of this sliver here. Most city staff say anything above Strickland Road is pretty much in Falls Lake, and anything south of China is pretty much in Swift Creek. And then you've got your urban, which is kind of this kind of much out of it. So that's kind of big picture of which kind of where you are. Not a lot of area, but a lot of people there. So the current regs today start with Falls Lake and Swift Creek. Like I said, they mirror each other the same. The target includes, as I said, there are nitrogen and phosphorus to get out of that water. Must reduce, nitrogen to 2.2 pounds per acre, which is the normal kind of Neuse River Basin overall target is 3.6. So you're kind of reducing that by a third. And then you must introduce phosphorus to 0.33 pounds per acre per year. Completely brand new regulation length of time. So they're really a baseline for your raw Neuse River city. That's kind of how that is. And with the buy down, which, currently today with other regulations, as long as you're implementing a primary stormwater device, which is a large one of our history area for an option of that, you utilize buy down with the default, but you can't utilize an outside buy down until you reduce pollutants on site by 60%. So that's a lot stricter than even the state law in 2011.
Are Biden's mitigation projects or is this different?
It's like these mitigation banks. There's probably mitigation banks that you see. I think one's called Wildwood's mitigation bank, is a local one around here. Yeah. So they have open space areas in this upper new space. And then all the impervious added the subject. So that was kind of in 2011, that was kind of our first foray in every piece of impervious area kind of gets permitted. Now that's kind of the normal across the whole city. But back then in 2011, you get like certain large thresholds until you got that permit. But now you get any impervious space. So any impervious area over 24% must be increased with our infrastructure or GSI. And city regulations are stricter than the state mandates. So Falls Lake, that's a very preordained kind of reasoning because we want to be the leader in Falls Lake since our water kind of hopefully lead the other communities that are trying to Falls Lake kind of be at least as strict, if not more strict. Yeah.
So might be a very ignorant question, but so you're saying these watersheds, they supply the whole rest of the valley?
Yes, the Falls Lake does. You can't see this very here in this map, but that's how much knowledge draining to it. But in this, here you can see that's the drainage area of the Falls Lake. It's kind of, yes.
Right. All of Falls Lake, the drainage area is 770 square miles, much of Durham, Person County, all drains into that. The point of Ben's map is really only a very small sliver of Raleigh city limits actually drain into the Falls Lake watershed, which is where our regulations still apply. All the other jurisdictions have to have some comparable water supply watershed protections in their zoning regulations that protect the remainder of the area. They have the minimum standards are what the state requires for the water supply watershed based on that classification. 1 is the highest level of protection, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the lowest level of protection.
Yeah, so and we're actually not really covered on the slide or anything, but we're actually a partner group on the Upper Neuse River Basin Association. That is basically every community that drains the Falls Lake and get together on a monthly basis to kind of talk about what's going on, state mandates, what's changing, what the different communities are doing. They do a lot of modeling efforts for Falls Lake to kind of see what the main problems are with Falls Lake, because it's still natural phosphorus, it's something else. So it's been a very beneficial just relationship. It's something that so be part of it. Us and Raleigh Water from the city side deal with it a lot and sit on those committee meetings.
With the different tiers of protection, I know that they deal with sort of reducing nitrogen phosphorus and then green stormwater infrastructure if there's above, I think it's 24% previous you said. Are there any tiers that require more tree retention on the landscape or look at kind of like, just requiring more tree protection or tree retention?
Yeah. So for Falls and Swift, they actually have a 40% forestation regulation for that. And I'll show you the next slide. That could be a little bit of a problem. We'll see a little conflict, but I'll be able to. But yeah, so there is a forestation requirement that's not in other properties. So like normally if you're over 2 acres anywhere else in Raleigh, if you tree conservation, but any part of for development falls in for free, they have to put a chip in the tree. So
Subject to that.
So there are a little bit differences, not exactly the same. Falls Lake, the maximum pervious for properties in Falls Lake is 30%. And then they're not residential zoning in Falls Lake. So, 40% forestation works really well with 30% maximum pervious. So pretty, there are designated areas that involve percentage. So that's where the map kind of gets a little tough on 40% forestation. And there is not zoning allowed on Swift Creek. Essentially, the Swift Creek should have had just a separate screen of the map, so we can areas, each community has their own high density areas in Swift Creek. The overall high density area for the whole Swift Creek watershed can't go above 5%. So each community got a piece of that 5%. So Raleigh's is close to South Summer Street, that area. The conference committee calls it the deployment area. That's it. It's just those designated areas that go higher percentage. It's essentially pervious. But there is commercial property or commercial zoning allowed where the calls they can see that. Just so, unless I learned 2 years in, churches and schools can't be built residential zoning. So see churches and schools in Falls Lake, that's why we built residential zoning, even though it looks like a commercial. But they still have to stay out of that area. And then both areas have had to comply with the rate control ordinance. That's not a different part of the code since we enacted that in 2000. So 2 and 10 year regulation, if they're upstream of structural flooding, they would have to go to higher rate control and things like that. But so that's a little bit different from what they would nutrient control if they're being based on this. So just the FYI, because the nutrient control that Falls Lake and Swift are doing is higher than the nutrient control. The nutrient control is Mississippi. But they do have to do rate control. The urban, so they're both primary secondary watersheds, they go up to 20% impervious without treatment. The primary, you go up to 50% impervious with treatment. In secondary, you go up to 7% impervious with treatment. That's a lot to say. The big thing to remember on this slide is that this last bullet here is your exemptions. Single family detached dwellings that were recorded prior to the regulations becoming effective in October 12th, 2008, the first time we came to a hearing, they are exempted from those regulations. And that covers 90% of the residential lots that are in that area considered party. And I have this little sign in my office. It's been there for almost 17 years now. From one of the public hearings that they passed out. And I didn't waive it. At the council meeting, but they gave me one. And they're not held to the Falls Lake standard for nutrient. They just have to do our overall use space and nutrient. So, like I said, it's the most flexible water supply watershed area, but it is not. So, a lot of the homeowners, as you can imagine, 2008 were very upset about they bought all this property 10 years ago, or bought this property, not lots, and then we told they can't put that. So that's it's quite tough. And they must comply with all of our other stormwater rules, which includes rate control, structural quality, for example. So, new development since 2001, stormwater. But a lot of Wakefield developed and Bedford developed before 2000. So there's a lot of Wakefield and Bedford that did get stormwater treatment that was enacted. So like Wakefield, Bedford, and Briar Creek were 3 big developments that came in right before we instituted our stormwater regulations. They grandfather did it in the mid 2000s. The future considerations. Obviously, there's a lot of development pressure in this area. We're seeing an increase in zoning requests overall. There is a housing deficit in Raleigh. And also, to pick on the Swift Creek Land Management Plan, there's a lot of talk in that plan about density versus impervious area. Most of the communities in the Swift Creek Land Management Plan have ordinances that deal with impervious area. And a lot of conference plan policies to talk about density. The ordinance is really where the road meets the road permit. So should we allow higher density in a watershed watershed area, but it still meets that 30% purpose, for example, which I think is something that we talked about with that last fall's case that we can off of Strickland Road. And this is not just an option. Garner's feeling this, Apex is feeling this, Carriage feeling this, and County's feeling all of this, and also in the Falls Lake as well. So two things to kind of think about is increased treatment options. Like you've got the GSI option now. Are there other things out there that we can do? Should we lower that percentage? You kind of go down to when you start doing GSI. Because in the Falls Lake and Swift Creek now, if you go above 12%, you have to have stormwater treatment. So right now, we kind of give you until you hit 24 to do GSI. So I think it's low. One thing with that Strickland Road case, I kind of got things moving on that is land conservation. That's something that I don't think we can really necessarily make a stormwater ordinance. It's something the city as a whole can kind of look at, is they offer some land conservation equivalent to the area they were going to develop that was initially in Raleigh. And they were to provide water along that to make sure that's something fit. The state of North Carolina is continually updating the watershed regulation rules, especially for Falls Lake. And they are going to update those soon. We have certainly, say soon. They've been threatening for a while, but it's geologically soon. They're going to have an update at some point. It's part of the discussion for that upper news group is kind of what they're going to look like and how the communities are going to comply. And then what does the increased mission involvement look like from you all's perspective? Is it an advisory role? Is it a permanent step in this rezoning process when you're in these areas? What does that look like? And so these are all things I think we do need to talk about and kind of discuss and kind of get thinking about. Because a lot of things that we brought up during these rezoning cases are talking about like other treatment options besides impervious. What does that look like? Stuff to kind of quantify what these other impacts could be for more traffic and people being in the workshop.
What are examples of updates that you can make?
Like I said, in 2001, they totally changed the reduction strategy to a different pollutant. I don't think they changed that. They might have changed the pollutant target you have to hit. That could be an option they could do. They could allow certain practices and disallow others. So with treatment devices and things like that, they could open the door for more research. And just some things they could do. There's been a lot that the Upper River Basin Association is working with the state on because they sit it all on the meetings. Steve Peter has a spot at the table with the Upper River Basin. They usually fill those. So they're an active member in that. It's just a matter of kind of what they're going to look at. Not most certain what their forecast is for what they're going to do. But if you follow the Jordan rules as well, they're kind of a similar pattern where they're being updated because there's more quality issues with the Jordan. They're trying to exclude others. I'm going to say anything with that.
Just, I think one thing that's been part of the conversation with the Falls Lake rules is that we haven't yet met the goals that rules set out to meet in terms of nutrient reduction. And I think that's an important part of the context of this conversation is we are not meeting our nutrient goals. And so there's conversation around adjusting those goals to be more realistic, but also to just do more good watershed works on the ground. So I do think this conversation, I really appreciate it. And one question I had was with the Strickland Road case, I know that when the city council was discussing it, there's sort of a discussion around, so the developer offered a condition for conservation, and that was pretty new, but there was a conversation around where that conservation parcel would be located. And I know that the city was working on kind of like prioritization maps, and y'all already actually have one. Is that something that would be considered in the future, or something like that?
Yeah, and I don't think that, yeah, I think yes. So the prioritization map, that Commissioner Crump's referencing is, Raleigh Water has a prioritization map because this is the drinking water supply watershed. Their primary responsibility is protection of water quality in the watershed. And Raleigh Water does do, conservation that they have funding and buy property in key parts of Falls Lake from a preservation standpoint. So they do keep that map of priorities for their buyout program primarily, I think, but it could also serve the purpose of giving priority properties that may provide extra protection as conservation areas as part of rezoning conditions too. So yes, I think that can and should continue to be part of that conversation.
So Pam, you said, a permanent fixture in the process. Well, the SMAC, we don't have the authority to set that.
Correct. So, the SMAC does not have a formal role in the planning rezoning process. The role we have, which is, a liaison to the planning commission, was recommended, at the council table, during the downtown south rezoning case. And a lot of stormwater issues arose at that table. And I think the council requested some input related to that and said that they would like input from SMAC, from the commission, and suggested at that point forward that and it's an informal, it's nothing written, the SMAC's legislation was not changed. But it was a request for an informal liaison process to occur. And that's when we started that. And so now we have a liaison to the planning commission, and the planning commission similarly has a liaison to SMAC that we meet roughly on a monthly basis to review planning cases and try to bring those with a stormwater interest or element to this commission for your input. And as you have done, it's reasonable to make comments through, the public comment process as citizens that you all are allowed to do. And if and when there is a consensus with the commission, you could weigh in as a commission. It would still be through that public comment process. There's not a formal role.
And like I said, I was thinking about finding what that is. Because I know there were some skips and starts, like with the Sugar Road case, as far as like, how do we run from straight, things like that. And, actually be a stop off for
Right.
after come by and take a meeting time, anything like that, which is something that's be able to kind of, how's that look? What's it?
So in application, when the inspectors are doing their annual or people who do the inspections, they might have a different set of standards that they're looking. That true, or is this like future development? When we
As far as
rules,
the devices that are on the ground.
yeah, rules.
Essentially, that device is designed differently than say than a regular phosphate. Like it's going to do nitrogen and phosphorus, it probably has to do with that. It's probably designed a little bit differently and closer to a green storm infrastructure device, whereas we don't have a citywide green storm infrastructure requirement. We have its option, but it's not required. Whereas like watershed, anything about 3% is getting it. But a lot of the devices, even below 50%, they're functioning like that green storm infrastructure, because I've learned since 2011, phosphorus is really tough to get out of stormwater. So they have to do some special things. Infiltration basically is the best thing that gets phosphorus out of stormwater.
So Raleigh's probably doing good work than,
I think we're doing a good job. I don't want to say we're doing more than anybody or anything like that. There's always room for improvement, but
So I've got a question, just so I can sort of understand the history. Years ago, I was up in Catskills. There's a reservoir there where New York City gets their water. It's heavily protected. They don't allow people to develop anywhere near it. Did we get here with Jordan and with Falls because the state just sort of allowed more development than maybe they should have? I mean, I know I'm trying to look backwards and Monday morning quarterback on this thing, or did the science come along and say, okay, nitrogen and phosphorus is a problem? Or did that problem resolve because we allowed maybe too much development? I'm just so I understand.
I will say the state's done a pretty good job of what we call keeping development far away from the city limits, because they're not really heavily developed right at the edge of the states. Now, the basin themselves, they have a decent amount of development, but they have kept development right off those lakes. Someone that spends time on the other lakes and on the state, sure, there are lots of places that have houses, everything else right on the state. I think they've done a pretty good job of keeping development off there. I think it's just, some of the technology and just paying attention to what's kind of causing this and what's not. As y'all like recall, the one was here in the mid-90s when those fish kills happened. That's really what kind of opened people's eyes about what was across the state. And I'm not saying that's the first time the fish kills happened. It's the first time it really hit on over some people. And it was it was kind of targeted as that, is that an nitrogen, and that broader eye, and what the clues are, and not just the suspended solids. So.
One other point, if I could, Chair, it's a little bit of a legal subtlety, but I think it's an important takeaway from this. Because the state regulations for water supply protection are different than the state regulations for stormwater regulations. Because we are a bill and rule state, we've talked about that. As a city, as a municipality, we only have the authorities that the state legislature gives to us to do. But because those are separate regulations, the city's authorities in water supply, watershed protection are slightly different than the city's authorities for stormwater management, stormwater protection in general. So it can be a little confusing. Like an example would be in the water supply watersheds, we have a lot more authorities in terms of riparian buffers and what those look like. And those can change depending on slopes and things. And I've been asked, well, why couldn't we do that everywhere else? Well, our authorities are different for stormwater elsewhere in this city. So it's a little bit of a subtle legal difference, but I think it's important to understand that they are different and we have some limitations to what we can do.
More questions, comments? Project team is working with itself.
Thank you so much. Ben. Before I invite Wayne forward, just want to recognize Raleigh City Council member Christina Jones. She is the newly appointed City Council liaison to SMAC. Welcome to the meeting. I've been a part of SMAC for 6 years. And according to my memory, this is the first time a city council member has attended a SMAC meeting in person. So your attendance here is not lost. It's a good sign of the relationship we hope to continue to build with SMAC and Raleigh City Council. Would you like to say anything?
I would love to speak.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Hi guys, my name is Christina. If I haven't met you, hi, and if I have, it's good to see you again. My role as your liaison, there's no definition for what a liaison is. So previous councils who didn't, they weren't breaking any rules. I just see liaison roles as different. When I came in, I served 2 years on the Parks Board and I never saw my council liaison. And I thought, how are you liaising? Like, what does that mean? How are you making sure that our voice is amplified? And so I was on 5 liaison roles last term and I attend every meeting that I can. And now this one I'm on 8. So I'm really excited. This is my passion, community engagement, making sure that your voice is part of the discussion, which is what our promise when you join the board is. And so I only ask that you're active, that you ask questions, that you help me learn, because you guys are the experts. I'm just beginning to enter this space. So I really appreciate your advice to me. You can have my phone number. You can call me, text me whenever you need to. I did want to take 2 minutes to address Strickland Road. Strickland Road is my district. It was a case that I was very much in favor of, even though I knew that there were concerns. I was in favor, however, both the Raleigh Water and everything was against it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to go with what staff said. And because of that switch, their vote shift to say, yes, it's okay, which is what allowed me to be comfortable with the case. Every one of these decisions are very difficult. You know, there are competing priorities in that one. There was really deep affordability in a district, and mine is very expensive. We have a very, very expensive and well-to-do district, and we were going to 20% AMI in that area. And so everything was kind of a balance and a trade-off. So I don't want you to ever think that because we voted for that we were dismissing concerns, because that was not the case. And you are more than welcome at any point to come talk to me and ask what my feedback is on that, please. I'm more than happy to share all of that at any point. So with that, I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. I just want you to know that I will be in attendance. I'm so sorry that I'm late. I thought in my head that we were going to be in council calls, and then I looked at my phone. I was like, oh my God, 20 minutes away. So I zoomed over here. I promise I'll look at the address better as we move forward, but please use this opportunity to just share your thoughts and concerns. Stormwater is a big thing in our district. In our 5 Points area, I'm hearing a lot of concerns, and I want to make sure that as we make decisions, that you are part of that conversation in, zoning. So I'm really excited to hear that you're already have liaisons with the planning commission. So you're already having those conversations. But you can always just talk with me and I'll make sure that that's part of our conversation. So I'm done now, unless you have any questions. I'm just gonna go sit over there. I will try not to interrupt, but if I have questions, raise my hand. So thank you guys so much.
I don't have a question. I just want to acknowledge that I think the outcome of the strip in the road for all of us, like we talked about how it was working the way that we hoped it worked is, we saw new stormwater amendments getting added as conditions. And what ended up happening was actually really, it seemed like a really forward-thinking solution. So I think we saw that as the way that input would hope to be received by council. So that was awesome.
And accountability is what I'm all about. So every time that there's going to be, let's not pretend, there's gonna be a case where we're gonna see things different. But I want you to always know that your opinion is valued and it will always be part of it. So, always share, and thank you so much for your work here and your dedication to stormwater and making sure that we do it better and better. So thank you guys so much.
Okay. Next presentation is the second in our series of budget discussions. We're going to focus on the capital improvements program specifically. And welcome any feedback, as always, of course. But this is a preview of a similar presentation that we plan to give to City Council on February 18th. There is a work session at 11:30 a.m. It will be before their normal afternoon meeting on February 18th. And so any feedback in terms of changes, edits, suggestions, please provide that during or after the presentation. Mission statement, don't need to review this in detail. You all understand this, but the budget process is a really important part of our mission in our vision. We need to make sure that our level of service is set to meet the needs of our community, and that our budget is set appropriately so that we can effectively, equitably, economically deliver on that mission. So be stormwater smart is in the back of our minds in all ways. And this is going to be a big fiscal year for stormwater. We've been talking about this now for a few years. Fiscal year 26, which starts July 1st of this year, will be the first time this stormwater plans to issue debt to support our capital improvements program. And that gives us so much more flexibility in terms of the size of projects that we do, the types of projects that we do. Up to this point, we have only been able to spend in any fiscal year the amount of what we call pay-as-you-go or pay-go capital improvements for that year. Using debt, I believe, is actually a fairer way of paying for capital improvements. If you think about it, we put in a pipe or we repair a dam. That is going to last 30, 40, 50, hopefully even more than that years. Why should ratepayers that are here today have to be the only ones to pay for infrastructure that is going to last for decades, right? So by using debt that is paid off over, say, 30 years, it spreads out the burden of the cost of that infrastructure over people who benefit over a much longer period of time. So I do think that the debt service model of funding infrastructure is a fairer way to our community to implement CIP. So here's the agenda. We're going to talk about the capital improvements needs, the process that we use. And when I say we, I mean mostly Barbara Moranta is going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the categories. And then the summary of the 10-year, which is the forecast that we typically produce for our capital improvements program so that we can then plan ahead for budgeting and rates and so forth. And with that, I will turn it over to Mark.
Okay, so we already have a lot of challenges. We have flooding, we have aging infrastructure, we have street erosion, contributing to water quality concerns. We have a lot of different programs to increase resiliency in the community, protect public safety, improve water quality. We have a lot of work to do. We have $920 million of known capital needs. And as Wayne said, we're using pay as you go strategy or pay go. And with our current budget, it would take us almost 66 years to deliver our known needs, and that's a long time. So as Wayne said, we're trying to accelerate that with the financing and grant strategy. And so the rest of this presentation is to talk more about the different programs in stormwater. So the different pieces of that pie chart. Where do these projects come from? How are they generated? And to go through some examples. So if you have any questions along the way, please ask. Just please ask. And the first piece of the pie, we'll start with the biggest one, major capital projects. So major capital projects, these address flooding, renew assets, improve water quality. These are our larger projects like neighborhood drainage, conveyance improvements, big asset replacement, dam rehabilitation. And a lot of these are identified for a watershed planning process. We had a presentation on that in the past. We talked about the process of watershed studies all the way from data collection, analysis, defining projects. And a lot of our watershed studies were done a number of years ago. They're being updated now. We started updating them about 4 to 5 years ago. So as we do that, we're taking all our new known capital needs and we're taking up the old, replacing with the new. And I do want to point out that one of the big things that we changed in the planning process was community engagement. So we didn't have that before, but we've added it to every phase of watershed planning. And our goal with this engagement is to equitably engage the community. So we want to make sure that the people we're talking to, we're planning these big projects, are reflective of the demographics of the community. And we do that by incorporating best practices from the community engagement playbook that the cities produce. We look at planning up front, like which stakeholders do we need to engage in the process. We reach out with a variety of things, online surveys, public meetings, pop-up events in different areas. If we're not getting the representation, we think we're going to pop-up events. And then we track the demographics to confirm that we're getting the representation that's important. So that's kind of the big picture on how major CIP projects are generated. A few that you've heard us talk about before, for example, Campfront Dam. This addresses a notice of deficiency from safety. So the city has a road over the crest of the dam, and it's a one-way in, one-way out road for about a community of 40 homes. And there's a spillway under that road that's eroding and threatening the dam bank. So this project will address the notice of deficiency and maintain access to the community. Another project is the Rose Lane Safe Access Project. It's again a one-way in, one-way out road, but frequently 1 to 2 times per year. So this project is looking at access on that alternate access route. And then next, another example is our East Lane project. This is in downtown Raleigh. We know there's flooding in the area. We know there's aging infrastructure in the right of way, which the city is responsible for. And also, as we were planning the project, a sinkhole opened up under the house. We talked about this example before on a private pipe. So this project will address the flooding and issues with aging infrastructure. That's kind of the examples we have from our major CMP category. Moving on to, yes.
Just a question on that one. When we talk about the numbers in the pie chart, 430, is that, I'm assuming that's the full backlog of everything. What's the kind of anticipated kind of timeline for those? Or it's going to be constant, the full backlog of projects, but those would be, I'm assuming, the 10-year.
Yeah.
Or is that, because I know with having additional debt, it could get us down to 25 years. Just trying to see what, if those projects fell into the.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We brought on the last slide of this presentation, kind of the spending over that, our next 10 years that we anticipated each category. And it'll get us a good way through that. So the total spending, is about 400 million. So it is about, less than halfway through the backlog. But a lot of that is major significant projects.
Yeah.
So is there one primary issue with the East Lane, project, or it's a combination of things, sort of perfect storm of things that are going on that make it complete better flying along?
Yeah, it's over infrastructure that was built and some of it's deteriorating. So there's lake pipe in the area with a lot of significant defects. And then it goes off the street back behind homes. So when it goes behind homes, that's private,
Right,
privately maintained. And that's where one of those people's have been done. So we're looking at taking these pipes and moving them out to the street. So people don't have to maintain infrastructure behind their homes like that. That's one of the alternatives that we're looking at. Making it big enough so that East Lake Street is not flooded.
and I know it's not possible, but if it were, daylighting, is that Pigeon Creek is there, or trip to that?
Yeah, it is a Pigeon House branch.
Yeah.
Tributary, it's a cemetery branch.
Okay,
And that's a really good point because daylighting is so important to water quality.
right,
And in this area, it's ultra urban, everything is piped. It's not a lot of room behind the houses for daylighting.
yeah.
I wish I had a map of that area to show you, but that would be difficult.
I guess a lot of homeowners don't have any interest in daylighting either, because I think some of them, they're safety issues, if they have kids, they don't have kids. Yeah, it's,
Yeah, and it's one little section in this area that is daylight, and then it goes right back to being
Right.
piped. So it's just the way it has been developed over time.
I think it's-
Okay, any other questions? All right, so water quality. So stream and wetland restoration improves water quality and natural habitat. Wanted to show one example from Wood Meadow Park, which is a wetland and stream restoration project off of Gilbert Road. This is a really great example. We restore wetlands in the park. This is a collaboration with parks. And wetlands are like nature's filter, right? So they remove the pollutants, sediment, and water. We also daylight, this is to your comment, we did daylight a portion of the creek there that was piped. So we took away the pipe and it flows over land that has floodplain benefits, water quality benefits. And it's also an amenity for the community. So you can see all the pictures that people have taken at the park and posted online on iNaturalist. The people are just enjoying the space. So, our question is, well, how do we do more of this? Where can we do more of this? And we're currently working with USGS and NCC on a citywide study to prioritize areas for stream restoration citywide. And so with this study, hope to identify new projects, new opportunities. It showed that over 40% of the streams and water could sort of severe erosion, so some opportunities for restoration. Most of our projects have been on city property. And the ones coming up are, for example, Smoothie Hollow Park downtown. This is stream restoration of 1,700 feet of stream and Pigeon House branch. This is to the East Lane Street project. Also has constructed wetlands to improve water quality. Also Worksville Park in southeast of Raleigh. This is stream and wetland enhancement. This is 2,000 feet of stream restoration. This project is going under construction around May or June timeframe this year. And then Upper Durant. So we're in Upper Durant Nature Park. So the upper lake here is going to be converted to a stormwater habitat wetland. The driver for this was a family, Dan. We're taking this opportunity to make some water quality. Any questions on these projects or?
Yeah, do you have we mentioned some of these sort of familiar with that, all the different presentations and mentioned over the years. Is there kind of an online repository of all database of those like the AGOL, things like that, or where what projects are going on and, what that might look like, just publicly available, be able to link to that information.
He does have a database of projects in design and construction. I don't know whether it's public facing. But each project should also have a website.
Yeah, I've seen this,
Yeah.
the project page, but I just didn't know if there was kind of a condensed area of this kind of planning of, because if you don't know, like, you kind of looking at the
Yeah.
neighborhood and say, hey, what's going on over here? You're heading this way and see,
Yeah.
just be a, thing to see across the board.
Okay, that's a really good suggestion. Maybe that's something we could do on the stormwater side, if it's not already public facing in the city side to help out. Okay. Yeah. Okay,
I think,
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. You said that 40% of streams and creeks are moderate to severe erosion. Yeah, on the USGS setting. Is that typical? It's not high for most land down. I feel like it's typical for urban areas, but I don't have statistics to compare to other municipalities. That would be a good idea for us to add our impact.
And this is, to my knowledge, the first time an analysis like this has been done. We helped co-fund this with USGS, and it's really an innovative technology using LiDAR to look at gauging that stream restoration and degradation. We have LiDAR over a period of time, and so we can see LiDAR measures the elevations, so we can see the elevations, but then we can also see the rate, of change. So this is something that USGS is doing for the first time nationally. So it's hard to answer your question because there really isn't a lot of data in other municipalities similar to this, but I do know USGS is interested in expanding this technology and using it elsewhere.
And you have to compare a lot of other factors too, the age of.
Yeah, the streets are constantly eroding, just,
Right.
they're constantly eroding, right? It's just it's all relative. How fast it's happening.
On with the, sorry, too fast, green stormwater infrastructure for GSI. So GSI brings water quality, heat mitigation, wellness benefits to the community. So here's some examples of GSI that we've installed throughout the city. And, in traditional gray infrastructure, it's designed just to take that water and move it away from buildings as fast as possible. So what GSI does is it's designed to fill up and rain events. So instead of moving the water away, it lets it infiltrate, it lets it spread out, slows it down. So, and it's a great amenity, you can enjoy plantings in the green space that helps mitigate urban heat. So we do have a lot of opportunities in our portfolio. And stormwater provides funding for GSI on other city projects. So we assist in design and construction of GSI for parks or roadway projects, for example, or vertical construction. So two examples of projects coming up are Vincent Lake Plaza, which is opening in 2025. That's GSI. That's going to be exciting. The tour with you all, and that's open. And then the green roof areas of the Civic Tower and Silver Cell Civic Tower is currently started. And also with SMAC support and council support, we now have started the GSI maintenance group, just housed in our parks department. So it allows us to maintain these devices after they're constructed. We appreciate that. And that brings us to our next category, asset management. So asset management protects public safety, protects water quality, reduces costs. We have 3 different asset management programs, one for GSI and stormwater control measures, one for dams and stormwater conveyance. So we maintain over 140 stormwater control measures at GSI, inspect over 25 dams, and over 680 miles of stormwater conveyance programs. And the point is to go out and do proactive inspections and catch problems while they're small. It's easier to pay for some repair small defects instead of waiting until they become a big emergency. So this group goes out, they do inspections, and they make decisions of where should we invest in order to maintain our infrastructure. An example of that is a pipe rehabilitation project. This is the first year we're doing it, and we have to do it annually. So we're identifying pipes with defects and doing a lining project. So we're going to sort of align around the pipes and fix them, so we don't have to dig down and do that later when they become an emergency. This is an example of the line pipe, and it's more cost effective to do this than you're digging down. It's more equipment, you're protecting other utilities, replacing pavement. So this is a less invasive. All right, floodplain management. So we heard from Ben's group last month. They did an excellent job. Floodplain management protects public safety and enhances community resilience. So as we heard last month, this group is working on improved mapping to assess flood hazard mitigation risk. So where are people at risk for flooding? And kind of in hand with that is through community outreach to tell people, hey, this is where you are, this is how you prepare for something. This program area also does planning studies for areas susceptible to flooding to make them more resilient. And there's voluntary flood hazard mitigation. So if the structure has been flooding, there's an option where the city with some support from grant funding can purchase this project. All right, the last two programs you're very familiar with: drainage assistance and stream stabilization, probably remodel. So drainage assistance, so you know that drainage assistance and stream stabilization protect structures, improves water quality. So this is a program for property owners whose structures are impacted by aging infrastructure, flooding, stream erosion. Here's a great example of a before and after on Worthwood Drive, where erosion is affecting that house. Raleigh Stormwater Rewards, very, very popular program to help improve water quality in public and private properties. Okay, so this is our last slide. This maybe gets back to your question. So we have the different categories that we talked about. The FY25 adopted plan, our proposed FY26 funding. You can see the big increase in the major CIP, our major capital improvements category, then the 10-year total. So this, I guess, to get to your question, would get us about halfway through the major CIP projects.
What if there's like some catastrophic event or an emergency, stormwater infrastructure? Do you have to reconfigure them or?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, if we, for example, had a major, we've inspected, for example, 30% of the underground stormwater pipes. We haven't inspected everything. So if we come across something that's an emergency, yes, we do have to update that in our budget. And that would fall under the asset management category, or if it was big enough, we would make it a capital project. So it would add to our capital needs, for example.
So like you got sort of a contingency plan that one.
Yeah, we can fit that into this again.
How do your debt limits get set? I mean, it's a little bit of a detail, but you're gonna just be in debt forever or less now going forward. More stuff will come along. You're moving into position. Just continue. Yeah.
Correct, yeah. So the plan is to use debt from this point forward as a tool for funding capital improvements. There will be a sum limit. And we rely on the finance department to help us with that, but in the general, the cap I've heard is you don't want more than half of your allocation to CIP to go to pay debt. So we will keep some of our programs funded with pay as you go. For example, I would expect the drainage assistance program, the Raleigh Rainwater Rewards program, watershed planning program, some of our capital improvement programs will continue to be paid as you go. The debt, I think, is most appropriate and applicable for these big infrastructure projects that will last for decades. And therefore, it's reasonable to pay for those over decades. But it is a balancing act, and so you don't want to take on too much debt, right? It to be financially sound. Correct, yes. The city's finance department is very much involved in guiding us because we have never done debt. So they are guiding us. There's actually an external financial consultant that they have engaged in the process as well. And the other advantage, though, is we have a very good model to go by. Raleigh Water is also an enterprise fund that's funded by utility rates, and they've been using debt for years.
Right.
They're much bigger than we are, but in terms of how they use debt is a very good model tool for us to follow. For example, and they've recently made some changes in how they use debt that we will mimic. And a good example is we will start the first 2 years of our debt using a draw program or kind of an equity program. And it's kind of like I equate it to a home equity line of credit, right? It's kind of a free cash flow line of credit that you can borrow against. And then when that's used up, say at the end of 2 years, we would then convert that to a revenue bond that would go to the bond market and be sold. And then that would free up this line of credit again that we would then start using again for 2 years. That's a new model that Raleigh Water has only been using for the last few years. But we gained from their experience and knowledge and how to do that. It gives us a lot more flexibility and them a lot more flexibility to move forward.
Yeah, that's great. Just you look at my bill and I am always just kind of worried about how much the rates are going to go up in the future, to cover this debt. Just it's scary to have safeguards that for renters, right? Absolutely, the cost of living.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the issue, very basic question. In the third year from this July, what's the big, what's the impact of that's right? Is it $1? Is it 20 cents? Is it, what are you spending $2 million a year to pay down your debt? What's
Right. Yeah, so that will depend on a lot of factors. It'll depend on the interest rate that we get at that certain, at that point in time when we sell our bonds and so forth. But let's say, for example, the upper limit that I said of half of your CIP funding would go to pay debt, right? So our CIP this year is about 14 million. So 7 million of that would be the maximum that we would want to go. And if I'm recalling the numbers, I don't know if Javier or Scott, but I'm recalling we toyed around with borrowing about 25 million as kind of an initial. And I think that would be about maybe an upper limit of about $2 million a year. So if we had 14 million pay-go, and borrowed 25 million, which is kind of a starting point, only 2 million of that 14 would be going toward paying debt. That would keep the other 12 or so for pay-go program. So we could obviously borrow a lot more than 25 million if we needed to before we started getting anywhere close to that threshold. And this isn't something we're just going to jump into and borrow as much as we can. There's a lot of other considerations, the types of projects, the cash flow. We need to have the internal delivery capacity. We don't want to borrow a bunch of money and then not be able to deliver for the community. So those are all factors that we're looking at as we phase this program in.
Could you help us speak to that criteria you used to kind of see what makes the cut for the first 10 years versus what gets pushed out to, the long-term planning?
Yeah, and that's a good question. So for each program area, do rate projects based on the prioritization model, for example. So the things that are in the first 10 years, the big public safety component, a lot of them do. So you saw, for example, like Camp Dam has safety, Rose Lane, East Lane Street is also has safety. And so a lot of the bigger projects and things like that in the near term have that, big safety work, like Upper Durant, big water quality.
And how often, I think we talked about this beforehand, but how often do you revisit that? Is that a yearly revisit of the percentages on how you're allocating the being like distributed between kind of criteria ranking? Like how often do you revisit those?
Yeah, that's it. On the tool itself.
Yeah, and I guess, if you have those big water quality ones or big capital projects, obviously, those are gonna be top of the list. But for the rest of them, I've seen in kind of develop my own kind of capital planning, work. There's projects that kind of keep on getting pushed down the line, no matter what, as kind of other ones, I think priority. So I just want to kind of see how often those were revisited and, what opportunities there were to look at that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So every year in the summer, we kick off our CIP planning process. And so that's when we start revisiting the backlog at each project area and saying, okay, what can we pull forward? What's moving ahead? Is there opportunity to combine projects based on what we have now? We reach out to other departments.
Right.
As in transportation, we've got the asset management projects coming up. What road projects do you have? So we could look for opportunities to combine efforts. So that is revisited on a monthly basis. Yeah.
Yes.
As we talk about, I know they talk about, concern for me as a new development or the cases coming in front of us, and we could be some restrictions, renew stormwater. In terms of asset management, are you guys able to keep track of all of the conditions that we set on them and on an ongoing basis? That's something that you're able to do currently, or is that something that you need to, this is helping you expand that?
We are able to do that currently. Yes, and Ben can comment on that. Whenever there are rezoning conditions, that's actually attached to that parcel legally as part of the development. So when plans come in our review, which all private development must be reviewed by city departments and applicable, we have stormwater plan reviewers. When those plans come in for review, those conditions are treated just like any other development regulation in our UDO, and our plan review staff checks for compliance with that zoning regulation.
Right, because that first step, I totally understand, if it's like a 10-year plan or something, are we able to check back with those 10 years? That's something that you guys currently have to practically do, or is that something that kind of is after year 5, or after year 7?
We pretty much keep that asset management plan updated on an annual basis, as Barbara mentioned. It depends on some infrastructure will remain private. Some infrastructure, stormwater, will become public, and then it goes into a public permanent drainage easement that we accept. It goes into our inventory, and that becomes part of our overall asset management plan in terms of frequency of maintenance, frequency of inspections. We get risk scores for every piece of infrastructure that then influences how often it's maintained and inspected and so forth. So that all then does go into our projected resource needs, our projected budget needs as well.
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much. You have in your agenda the list of upcoming preliminary topics. Before we adjourn, we're going to have a short presentation about where we are. After we adjourn, there's an optional tour you choose. So I do invite you to stay for the tour. Obviously, if you can't, you're free to go. But I invite Mandy Forward and Kyle to talk about the projects at Durant Nature Reserve.
Just while this is downloading, thanks for your time. I don't get to attend these very often, so it's really appreciate your time and your interest in these projects. Always great to see what the improvements that I policy. While this is downloading, our primary focus presentation is going to be the spots related to SCM stream restoration project, which we're after. And we've got some extra boards in the back about that. But the other direct project that Barbara briefly touched on is the Upper Durant methane conversion project, which I'm also project manager for that. Just to give you a brief update, at the end of the year, we finished what we call our vision document, which is essentially a concept level 30% plan that outlines where that'll go for construction. That's available online. If you're interested, highly recommend you check that out. You can roll Raleigh Stormwater grant version, that's posted on there. We are in the process of getting contract routed for final design, and we've been working really hand in glove with our partners here at Parks and the folks that sit directly below us. They've been a great partner. They bring a lot of expertise from a biology, planting, ecology standpoint. So I'm involved in the mapping out of what we're going to do with the plantings and then creating habitats. So that's it. I guess any questions on the Upper Lake before we dive in? Cool. So briefly, this project, sort of two projects in one. We've got shrimp restoration here. This is the lower lake that we're looking out now. We're off the map here. This is the industrial complex that we talked about that drains to this SCM that's in a state of disrepair. So you're doing work to retrofit that and then repair the downstream stream channel. We just received and awarded this past Tuesday an acceptable construction bid. The bid came in at about 1.6 million. So that'll be funded 1.4 from our CIP group. And we also have a $200,000 NCD grant for that construction as well. So the more detailed map, there's a picture of this in the back, so if you want to check out on the way out. Again, this is the lower lake. This is our SCM. This is our shooting that we've been working on. Part of the construction limits outlined in white here. There's going to be the yellow lines or trails that are used by the public. One trail is going to have to be shut down. There's a component where, as part of the stream work, we're installing some pedestrian bridges there, so there's some new trail amenities. So it's part of this project. We'll have some lane closures, as you'll see if you're familiar with this area at all. It's highly industrial. There's public traffic with 18 wheelers and stuff. So there's some traffic control measures there. Some of the project goals. So again, there's kind of two main things. This is for the stormwater control measure, the SCM. A really interesting component that we're adding on this that we don't typically use on SCMs is continuous monitoring of the depth control technology. Very similar to some of the stuff that we use for the raising and lowering of dams and flooding funds. I'm sure you've had presentations on that previously. We've consulted with Kelly Daniels, one of our staff that runs that program, just to make sure that after this is installed, he can incorporate that into his program to get the data that he needs for that, make those things compatible. So yeah, so the goal of project retrofit to better control runoff, improve downstream water quality, reduce downstream stream erosion. I mean, you can see this thing gets short circuited and bypassed during large events all the time. It's really pulling out the stream downstream. Similar goals on stream restorations are some photos that are at this point pretty out of date after some of the storms we got this past year. That stream channel is changing every time I'm out here. More tree falls, more erosion. The gully that's formed has gotten more severe. It's actually encroaching on the existing trail there. So again, trying to improve, reduce sediment that gets down in the downstream lake, improve some of the water quality downstream animal, as well as improving park aesthetics and things. It's kind of a sketch. This isn't quite our 100% plans, but still pretty close. So this is the proposed for the SCM. Sort of footprint here. Got two inlets coming from all the drainage and industrial portion of the map here. A couple of 4 bays to allow us to capture some of the sediment and provide maintenance there.
and our primary outlet pipe and our overflow spillway. So there's gonna be two different channels in the downstream end, which is the pond. Vegetative shelf around the pond, and we had to go through some specific design exceptions for this part of the project, just because it's older, it wasn't built to our current standards, so we're trying to essentially fit something in a really tight space this year. So it's challenging. These are some of the renderings that our consultant pulled together, just that we provided during public meetings, kind of give you an idea of what to expect during construction. Big hole in the ground, and then afterwards, vegetated shelf, there are a couple of 4 bays or riser access to get in and scoop out the sediment, do maintenance and plantings. And then our solar panel for our control for the seeping system. For the stream restoration, similar, we were just looking over here, this is the downstream end, the lake is over here. So we've got our primary channel here. This will actually be all new. This might be a little hard to see, but the gray outline here in the background is the existing channel. Tighter lines mean more erosion, so this is a pretty bellied channel at this point. They'll actually form this and construct this offline separately. Use some of the fill material there to backfill on this end, and then use that channel from the primary spillway as sort of the overflow when we get those larger 100-year kind of storms tying into a more stable point downstream. There's also a diversion structure that allows for when the main channel gets overwhelmed, for some more relief on the other side. These are typical cross main structures. Same thing we talked about before, some renderings, kind of what to expect, what it'll look like. There'll be tree clearing, but tree protection fencing throughout. A lot of notices, marking trail closures, and trying to cover that area. Or kind of some of those rock features I was talking about, cross remains, to be installed and keep it. And then I think one of the hardest things for folks to conceptualize when it comes to stream restoration is when you're done with the project and walk away. Tends to look like just like that. So this being a very heavily trafficked public park, I think it's important. Try to reiterate that these things take time to grow up. So, you know, you've got to sort of emergent structural phase. You eventually kind of get back into the, older, more mature trees over time. It's just an aerial view, and this is us. That's our channel here. So next steps, like I mentioned, just 2 days ago, we awarded went to council to get awarded the project to our apparently bidder, Rubio Solutions. We've worked with them on award projects. I think they're really good at this, especially work. So we're excited to work with them. We'll be developing contract documents with them over the next couple of weeks. Continued coordination with private property owners and park staff. There will be some public notice, emails, postcards, that kind of thing that go out to folks in the neighborhood, as well as just working, like I said, hand in glove with park staff to notify them. And we need to close trails and what to expect in terms of disturbances. And then we anticipate us proceed, which is start construction roughly early in mid-June. So not too much. Thank you.
I have a question. Yeah, but go ahead, Sean.
Oh, yeah, so the lakes, were they originally here for flooding mitigation or?
I don't think so. I think it was recreation.
Was it?
It was a Boy Scout camp, and so I believe they were primarily built for recreational purposes to support the camp. Fishing and things like that, yeah.
Parks and Rec has like a summer thing out here. Right?
They do, yeah, there's a lot of programs,
Okay.
Here that take advantage of this as a nature preserve. And
Right.
that's a designation that's different than many other city parks. It's officially a nature preserve, so that changes the mission slightly, from a park more to focusing on the habitat. And that's why this decision to rather, when the upper lake, the dam failed, the decision to not just put it back the way it was a very carefully constructed one. Got a lot of input Parks was obviously involved in the decision to change it, not have it be a lake, but more of an aquatic wetland type of habitat, fit well with the nature preserve concept, because it's gonna bring new habitat, new wildlife types into the nature preserve. And then it'll have boardwalks and access as well to take advantage of that.
Oh, nice.
I can expand on that, actually.
Yeah, please.
The plantings is part of the cover. Like, we're working with Parks on it. They're actually gonna be taking some seeds and trying to self-propagate some rare species they have here. So that when it comes time to plant, they'll have those that you can't typically get in growers. And we're also trying to get through a unique procurement process to, secure some specialty plantings that we have no control and flexibility over. Just keeping in mind that this is a nature preserve. We don't want to get to the end result, put plants in the ground. After it's fed. And, you know,
Is there also this is wonderful, first of all. I'm just wondering if there's also an educational component of, plan for signage or something that kind of like explains this to the public as they walk by and see what's going on. I'm sure there is, but.
sir, yeah, more so for the upper lake, but I think when you mentioned boardwalks, there's gonna be boardwalks with signage and boardwalks. Updated trail, kind of, here's what a crossfade is, and I'm sure you know that kind of thing. So there'll be a lot of educational opportunities, and that's some of the stuff that we're working with Parks to keep in mind.
Because I know that this group is a bunch of GSI nerds, so we'll look at it and say, oh, we know what's going on there, but most people will walk by and just say, cool, bunch of plants, etc. I think that is really.
CMAC, is that for the spillway between upper and lower?
No, it's the controlling the outlet from the SCM itself.
Okay, so it is, I guess it's controlling both volume and velocity.
Yes.
Okay. Is one more important than the other?
Yeah, so the CMAC is the smaller stormwater control measure, not between the upper and the lower.
Gotcha.
And the idea of the CMAC is because, as Kyle mentioned, that was an older design of a stormwater pond before we had our current standards. So it's really too small, especially for this highly industrialized area. So when we went to retrofit it, we wanted to try to get as much water quality treatment as we could. So what this CMAC does, it actually gets weather forecasts. And when it's forecast to rain, it just lets water out to give more water quality treatment pools. So the lower the level, the more than rainfall runoff it can capture, and you get better water quality treatment. So that's really the purpose of that CMAC, kind of preemptively improve the amount of water quality storage because it's undersized for what it should have. Okay.
And also lowering velocities and downstream. That's good.
You have questions?
One more.
Yeah, fair.
Are there any solar measures currently on that industrial site, or was it grandfathered in before the stormwater measures were required?
It was grandfathered. It was before we had stormwater requirements. Now, that pond was part of a rezoning condition. I think, and this is somewhat conjecture, because I think that was done maybe in the 80s, way before we had any stormwater regulations. I think it was done because of the concern of the park and the lakes here and water quality. And Perry Creek, which is the watershed we're in, is also an impaired waterway. So there's a lot of water quality issues here. So I think in order to get that industrial area zoned how they wanted, they must have suggested, added a condition for that stormwater pond to be placed. But we as the city just did not have the regulatory enforcement mechanisms. Zoning doesn't have the type of mechanisms in there, at least in that day and age that we do now. So it was not maintained. It fell into disrepair. So that's when, and I think it was Kevin Boyer, a past staff member of ours, found it and said, this is what a great opportunity for us to retrofit this facility that's fallen out of this repair. Now, Justin Harcum can tell you, because he was involved in, there was extensive negotiations with the property owners to get the easement rights. That probably took 3 or 4 years. And then we were almost done, and then the property owner changed, and we almost had to start over again. So this has been a project in the making for quite a while, but a very exciting one, especially with this piloting of this new technology that we're gonna be using to control the water levels here. We're very, very excited to see this project happen.
Right,
Thank you.
thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn? Call second. All in favor? All right, thank you.